Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover with John Barbin, and let's talk football.
Yeah, let's get to it. This week is thin on both, but let's get going here. My list is a bit of a strange one. First one's the kind of the only obvious one is Alabama at Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin's not much to talk about this year, but it might be a test for Alabama, given that Bama hasn't looked great. Like on paper, when the games end, the score looks good, but I don't think Bama actually looks good in those games. So I'm assuming this will be some kind of test. I mean, Wisconsin's got some players. It's still on the road. It's not a pushover. It's going to be something. Like last week, Bama did not look good for at least half of that game. So maybe the same thing's going to happen here, or maybe this is a get right spot. Either way, this is something I think worth having eyes on, given how weak this, at least on paper, how weak this week's games look. This one, I think, that's a tough sentence. This one is going to be something worth paying attention to. So that's my first one on the list. Nothing more to say about it other than this is more of a measuring stick for Bama. I don't think Wisconsin is a significant player this year in any sense.
Yeah, I would have been super excited about this game if it was late November, because seeing Bama play in the snowy environment would have been really entertaining. But we're second week in September, so this game is going to be, I'll be really interested in watching like the first 5 minutes just to see Bama line up against Wisconsin, because it's a matchup we don't normally see. And then I fully expect Bama to take care of business. And I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I don't think they'll be in major trouble at any point. But I'll be really looking forward to the kickoff, just to seeing them line up like that. The one I had next on my list was the Florida Texas A&M, just because I'm hoping that Lagway starts again. So that's if we could get his second start in a row, because he threw over 400 yards or whatever the last game. Now it was against Samford. But I don't know how good Texas A&M is, especially after how Notre Dame looked against Northern Illinois. And it's at Florida, so if Lagway can look good about that, and you can tell, speaking to your point about this being a thin week, that's the main CBS game of the week, which is two unranked teams playing each other. So that's a bit of a statement of what the slate's like in the NCAA this Saturday.
Yeah, I saw that on the list, and I didn't even think to put it there. It's just Florida's just so disappointing, and so is A&M. I mean, A&M's just the same old thing. I think it's the quarterback's just not there. Whatever it is, how do you have that much talent and you just can't put it together? And it seems to not matter who the coaching staff is. Again, I don't get how programs can look the same with completely different coaching staffs. I don't understand how that's even possible if the philosophy is their own and each coach brings his own philosophy, but somehow like A&M's perpetually looks like they should be good enough, looks like they have the talent, and they just can't get there, and they just kind of do that every year. And this year's no different, at least so far. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess that's one worth watching, but I don't expect Lagway's the only interesting thing to me in that whole game. So we'll see.
Very true. Hopefully he starts. I still don't know. If I was checking this the time of recording, I don't know if they've announced it yet. But yeah, your Elko's only, he's been there for 2 games, so it's a little early to say that it's same old. But you're right, it might end up being like that. What else you get? What's your next game you have for NCAA?
Arizona K-State. Actually, the Big 12 is my scrappy team for this week. I got Arizona K-State. I mean, Fafita is always worth watching. K-State's one of the favorites for the conference, but I would say Arizona's right up there too. Could be a championship game preview too, conference championship game preview.
I was going to say, did you immediately know that this was a conference game when you first saw it on the schedule?
Well, I thought, yes, this is a conference game. Yeah, I kind of had to think twice about it, but obviously with all of the shakeups, it's reasonable that you can think, hey, that's a pretty good out-of-conference game. Oh, no, wait, that's actually a conference game.
That was my first thought, to be honest. I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting matchup, and then I'm like, oh, that's a conference game now. So that changed it on my list. It moved it up on my list, not only because it's Friday, so that'll be fun just to have it at something to do for the Friday, but it's it's a conference game, and both of them are ranked, and so that's going to be like this is suddenly a quietly important Big 12 matchup, early on. So,
All right, what do you got next?
I've got Oregon State. I put this in. This is the same category as Iowa State last week, where going into it, I don't really have much interest in the game, but I'm just putting it on there because it's a rivalry game, and those pique my interest more than usual. And last week it worked out. Iowa State turned out to be a great game, even though I was sort of expecting nothing coming for that game going into it. And so now I'm the same way with Oregon State. I'm not super excited about it, but I'm putting it on the list because it's a rivalry game. It's in Corvallis, I believe. And so I'm going to watch that, and I'm hoping for another good one.
Yeah, I have. Okay, so on that note, I just have Oregon, Oklahoma, and Notre Dame. My note says just permanent upset alert. They've looked shaky. I mean, Notre Dame's obviously already dropped a game, and the other two have looked really shaky. So as far as I'm concerned, no matter who is on the schedule, they're just on my permanent upset alert. So they're always going to have one screen on that game, on those guys, just because they haven't proven it yet that they're just going to walk away with a game like this that on paper they should. So they're not necessarily intriguing matchups, any of their games this week, but the way they're playing, it could go bad. So I've got all three of them on there. My next one's UNLV Kansas, rematch of last year's bowl game. I get that there's different players. This is a get right spot for Jalen Daniels. Last week they gave that game away Kansas gave that game away to Illinois. So Kansas should be better than that performance. They should have won last week. They should win this one, but you don't know. He 3 turnovers is pretty bad. So this is more of a, can Kansas get themselves right than is UNLV really going to challenge them? But we'll see. It was a fun bowl game last year, so maybe they'll come up with another fun game to watch. Again, another Friday nighter.
Interesting. Didn't even make my list. That's interesting you put them on there. Kansas is always fun to watch. My first reaction when I saw that in the schedule is that this would have been an amazing basketball game about 20 years ago. So that's as much as I thought about that football matchup. And I think is this another one that's in the funky location? Are they one of the ones that are?
And I don't even think it's Arrowhead. It's some smaller field.
No, it's Children's Mercy Park in Kansas City, Kansas.
Yeah,
so
it's going to be.
I've never heard of it.
It's going to be interesting on TV, that's for sure. So kind of like the Northwestern setup. All right. Next one I got here is the backyard brawl, West Virginia Pitt, and there's nothing really else interesting I saw. First of all, this game's usually kind of fun to watch. It's usually scrappy, no matter what their records are. And great uniform game.
Very true.
Just both these teams just look good on TV. So, put it all together. Again, we're about partly here. We're just talking about the entertainment value and how the game actually looks as part of the entertainment. And this game always looks good. Just visually, it's the aesthetics of the game looks good. So I don't know. That's made my list for something on what looks like a relatively mundane week. That one, I think, regardless, usually it's a good game, but also it'll just look good. It'll just pop on TV.
Yep, that's another rivalry game that I had 2 games sort of linked together, and it was the Pitt, West Virginia, and the Colorado State. Like the Pitt, on paper, the Colorado State game should be more entertaining, but I think you're right. I think the Pitt, West Virginia game is going to be good. It usually is. Excuse me, and it's I think that'll probably round out my list there. The last thing I had was in the sort of what are you doing category is the main 7 p.m. ESPN, 7 p.m. Eastern ESPN game is UTSA at Texas, which I can't believe that's the main primetime game on ESPN. Texas is a 35-point favorite. I know people want to watch Texas, but man, is that not going to be a competitive game? At least it shouldn't be. So can't believe that's what they came up with for the 7 p.m. ESPN game.
Yeah, and even with all the conference realignment and the interesting games, this is one thing college still is getting, I say, wrong. It is these lopsided warm-up games. At some point, that's going to have to go away as this realignment stuff keeps happening. It's just not worth watching a lot of these games. I get it. The Texas fans will enjoy watching their team beat up on whoever, but from a standpoint of an average fan like us who wants to watch more than just one game, there's just nothing on offer here that's worth watching. If you're not like a hardcore fan of a given team, I just can't. I hate this. I hate these warm up games or whatever you call these games. It's just so much more fun when there's like legitimate matchups. Like there is no Texas Michigan game this week. There's nothing that even touches that caliber of game this week.
Yeah, and it's and to your point too, just on the last show I was talking about how much I like watching Tennessee. I think Nico's fantastic. That would be appointment viewing for me each week. They're playing Kent State this week. They're 49-point favorites, and if Tennessee goes up on them, 28-0, like I'll have zero interest to keep watching it because it's. So, I'll watch the first 5 minutes maybe, but then that's about it, which is really too bad because I can't believe we don't have a better ranked matchup this week. So it is thin.
Yeah, you called it. I thought last week was thin. This is probably the worst one of the whole season. Again, we could get a crazy
hope we don't
upset.
Get too many more.
Maybe Kentucky puts Georgia on roller skates there or something and makes it a
oh my goodness,
a rough one. They're not. I know they're not. That's gonna be ugly. I'm just trying to imagine.
You said that out loud.
I'm just trying to imagine anything that could possibly happen this week of interest. But again, we didn't expect Notre Dame to lose last week, so something crazy could happen. And again, on paper, doesn't look like much of anything, but with college, there's always going to be a crazy outcome that we don't expect. So. I'm not anticipating much of anything exciting to happen, though, basically, but from what I see on paper. All right, you want to move on to the NFL?
Right. Let's do it.
All right, what do you got?
And just after a quick apology for all the Georgia fans out there that all of a sudden we're just officially Georgia's not on John's upset watch list. Okay, so just everyone can just relax there. He was just speculating there. Just don't want it to be misunderstood.
Yeah.
Okay,
and as you guys can see, hang on. As you guys can see, as a Florida alumni, the Georgia helmet is on the wall. They have their spot. So we're a Georgia pod too.
Okay, so officially going over the NFL. Okay, I'm going to open with the Thursday, the Miami and Buffalo. Always, this is a great inter-conference game. It's always great when both of them are good. That hasn't always happened over the years. There's usually one of them's been up and the other's been down, or vice versa. So when they're both good, I really like this game, and it's important for both of them to get the conference win. And I like the matchup of seeing. Miami had a bit of a scare last week against Jacksonville, and Buffalo had to come back against Arizona. And I think it would be a 2-0 start for these teams, for both teams, would be important. And so I think it's an important game for them.
Yeah.
Plus, it's also the shortest odds, I believe, of the week. It's like 1.5 right now. So it's on paper, it's the tightest game. It's Miami's favored by 1.5 right now.
Yeah, I mean. And to me, any game with Josh Allen's going to be fun to watch regardless, but also division game. This is going to be an important one. So, yeah, that's on the list. My next one is Lions Bucs. And now, is this a potential NFC Championship game preview? I know I keep saying that, but the Bucs look pretty good. This is clearly Baker Mayfield's second coming.
Your week one overreaction.
The
Bucs are looking
overreaction.
good.
The Bucs look good. The Lions look really good. So this, we're talking about two playoff teams here. So maybe this will actually be a pretty competitive game. Could you imagine like 5 years ago saying the Lions Bucs is on my list? It's just no one's.
Yeah. It's the first one you're listing today.
Yeah. Yeah. But pre Tom Brady's stint with the Bucs and pre the Jared Goff, Dan Campbell Lions era, you couldn't pay someone to watch this game. Now it's going to be a good one.
For about 20 years, this would have been the worst game of the week consistently. Mm-hmm. So,
so
and now times have changed. And I like watching Baker Mayfield. I think he's on that kind of team. It's a bit of a gunslinger and throws it around, and it'll be entertaining. And Detroit, if Detroit comes out and plays like they did the last week, and they're running the ball, and if they exert their dominance this week, that's going to be a pretty big statement, even if it is, Tampa. Like you said, that's the other team that could be good in this division. So,
All right. Next, I got
what's your next one?
Chiefs Bengals. The Bengals were quite underwhelming last week, but they are the one team that's gotten the Chiefs in the playoffs. So it's to me, this is more of we kind of know what we're getting with the Chiefs. We don't really know if Burrow's going to be right or not. Whatever last week was, I get it. There was a fumble on the goal line and a couple of plays that might have been luck plays that Bengals should have performed better, but that was pretty bad. So either something's up with him or something's up with this team. I thought coming into the season, if he was healthy, they could challenge the Chiefs, but right now they don't look, at least after one game sample size, they don't look that good at all. So this is going to be obviously a huge test because the Chiefs look exactly like where they left off. They just look like the best team in the NFL. So we'll find out. I think we're going to find out a lot about the Bengals right here. So who knows? To me, this is a huge question mark, but coming into this season, this looked like, AFC Championship game preview. No, this is are the Bengals for real at all type game now? This is a total unknown on their side.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, it's a completely different feel to it, especially since they lost to New England last week. If they, I'm sure when the schedule came out, they thought they would win that one, and then there's a big 1-0 teams going against each other on the week 2. And so after losing that one, you don't want to start 0-2, in the NFL. That's historically has been bad in terms of percentage wise making it the playoffs. And so all of a sudden you're losing to New England, and then you've got KC now, in the second week, and at KC no less is a really bad position to be in. Now, saying that, their next 2 games is against Washington and then the Panthers. So it's totally conceivable that they can still go. They could start 0-2, but then end up 2-2 after those weeks. So we'll see. But I think more importantly, even if they lose against Kansas City, if they came out and competed well, I think that's important. If they get steamrolled, then it's really bad. That's not a good sign.
Well, we'll find out. What do you got?
Okay, so next one for me is in the what could have been really interesting category. So I have this Indianapolis at Green Bay. I was interested, if Love was playing, this feels really different. But now he isn't. It's, not. I was really excited to see the Richardson and Love matchup, and I'm not getting it. So I'm upset about that. I'll still tune in, but it's taken a bit of the luster off for me.
Yeah. I saw a report today that they're not even ruling Love out for this game. Is that just them being kind of coy with the media, or can an MCL heal that fast?
Well, it's like we talked about in our last show, it's the ligament on the inside of the knee, and it resists a very specific valgus movement of the knee, and it is possible to protect it well with taping and with the brace. So I think the choice to not put him on the IL is more because they're not sure about the return time. They gave a pretty wide range before, so 3 to 6 weeks. So listing him as week to week gives them the option of coming back at 2 weeks or 3 weeks without having to officially go on the IL. So that's, if I had to imagine, that's why they're doing that. But I feel like it's unlikely that they would, risk it and play it this early. So because all right, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure if there's precedent for it healing that quickly. Yeah.
All right, so my next thing here is my only other one that I really have listed here is at sticking with my theme for the year, the Falcons Eagles, and for no other reason than the Falcons QB controversy is just going to heat up no matter what happens here. Especially if Cousins has a bad game, because that first game looked really bad, and the Eagles are a legitimate team here. So if he looks bad here, I think the heat for putting Penix in is just going to keep getting hotter. So also the Eagles. I mean, the Eagles are a legitimate team here. Barkley. I want to see if Barkley follows up that performance. But yeah, this is on my list for mostly because of the Cousins Penix thing.
Yeah, I think that that's the what didn't help is Cousins coming out slow in the last game and not having a great game, and then that's we called it before the season started that's that voice of getting the backup in there is going to just get louder, if he struggles again. So it's an important game from him to play well. Otherwise, the call for Penix is going to be deafening. So yeah, that'll be important. Last thing I had on my list here, I've got another Dover diagnosis segment. Just another disclaimer. I've never seen this player. I've never treated, never actually seen the imaging, but it had an interesting injury, so I wanted to talk about it. And that's Puka's knee injury from the Rams, the wide receiver. So he's got a posterior cruciate ligament sprain, and will miss, is just put on IL for 4 games. And so that's interesting because you don't see the PCL injuries as much as the ACL. So the ACL resists, the anterior cruciate ligament resists the forward translation of the tibia on the femur, and the PCL resists the backward translation on it. Normally, the way you injure the PCL is what they call the dashboard injury, where you're seated in a car, and then if you hit the car in front of you and the dashboard would hit your tibia and push it backward, that'd be the way of tearing the PCL. So it's slightly unusual to do that in sports. It's also a little bit thicker than the ACL and stronger, so that makes it another reason why it's torn less often. But the rehab is going to be waiting for the ligament to heal, and it'll also be strengthening the knee muscles around the ligament, and you just want to stabilize it, especially with the quad strengthening, so you prevent the tibia from being able to be pushed backward again, because that would strain the ligament. So it's interesting to see the PCL. The risk of tearing later is not like the ACL, again, because it's stronger. But 4 games is significant, and that's a wide receiver they really need, So hopefully the rehab goes well, and he'll still have the full mobility when he comes back.
Yeah, and that's just a reminder of how fast NFL players can drop from injuries, and it doesn't matter old or young. It just takes one play, right? Like Nakua's big, he's strong. I mean, he's young. He's all there, and then this happens. It's not like it's not like he's 35 or something, and just kind of at the end. He's just at the beginning here. So yeah. So hopefully he comes back sooner than later. But yeah, that is interesting that it's such a different one to strain. And that's the other thing. Just because certain injuries are common it can happen. Anything can go with all of the awkward positions they end up in.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it's you don't see that all the time, and but the rehab should go well, and they just want the knee to be stable for him to be planting and changing direction, and so hopefully 4 weeks will work out.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I think that's a good place to leave it, and we will talk to you next time.